Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to have a look at adding another team to a two-team game in Crayta. So the game I'm looking at is Just Business and it's built from the team deathmatch blueprint. So whilst I have customized a fair chunk of this game, the underlying logic is identical to a team deathmatch or even the capture the flag kind of blueprints. So if you want to follow along, those are the ones to go for, and you could start from scratch, or you could work with a game that already that has been built from those blueprints, and you should be able to use the same logic that I'm going to be looking at here. Firstly, if you are making a game with more than two teams, I would arrive at that decision as early as possible. The game that I have in front of me was designed for two teams. The narrative fits around two teams. The level design is all designed with just two teams in mind. And so it's really something that I'm retrofitting to this game, and that is not ideal. The best way to do it is to think, how many teams do I want in my game, as one of the first things you think of, and then the narrative and the level design can all come from that. The game can be nicely balanced to work with however many teams you've specified at the beginning. Rather than retrofitting it like I'm doing here. I'm literally just doing this because I'm looking at the game logic behind it and how to add another team. Now that we have that caveat out the way, I would also like to add that we're going to be doing scripting. It's a very mechanics focused tutorial. So you're going to need to use advanced mode for that in Crayta. If you're not sure how to get there, you're going to start in basic mode when you enter an editor, and then you're going to hit tab and you'll be in advanced mode. You'll need a keyboard and mouse to enter advanced mode because we're going to be doing some scripting. Okay, so there's a couple of key places that we need to adjust our game logic to make sure that it works with another team. The first and most important is our game script, which I can find on this locator here. If you're working with one of the blueprints, your locator may be called something different, but you should be able to find your game script fairly easily. It's the thing which is controlling the underlying logic of most of the game, all of the lobbies and spawning and points and all of that sort of stuff. So here we can see that I've got two teams at the moment, team name blue and team name red. These are two properties, one for each team. And they are, if you don't want to call your team blue and you want to call it something else, like I think I've called mine Itchy Triggers, then that's where you can put that in the properties down here. You can see team name blue is Itchy Triggers, team name red is Crimson Widows. Now, it's not going to be much of a three-team game with only two team names, so I'm going to start by adding another team name. And I'm going to copy the formatting. I'm going to choose the color green. It's not actually necessarily going to be green. It's really just that green is just there as kind of like a way of separating the different teams, just in a bit of an identifier as a color. Type is a text, and visible if equals visible if teams. When I finish that line of code there and hit save, I can see that team name green has appeared as a property now that I can change over here in my entity editor. So I'm going to change that. These guys are going to be called the money grabbers. And I'll do all the branding in the UI and stuff later on. Okay, so we have a new team. Now, where else do we need to update our game script? Because at the moment, it has a few places where it's specifically designed for two teams. A good place to start with is the init function. So init is essentially short for initialization, and this is the first function that was called by the game engine when the game loads up. And so this is going to be doing a lot of the setup of the game. In here, we're going to add another team score. So we had two team scores, one for blue, one for red, and now I've added one for green. We've also got a table here for the different team names. So I'm going to add self.properties.team name green here. And we've also got team colors, and I'm just going to add mine in quote marks there. The team colors like this is essentially used for the stock UI. So you'll see that the blue is colored blue, the red is colored red in the heads up display on the scoreboard. And then if you put in green in lowercase like this in between quote marks, then it will automatically show up as green. You could choose another color, pink or purple or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to go with green. Okay, so we've added a couple of additional indexes essentially to these three tables. Let's see what else we might need to do in our game script to make it accessible for 3 teams to play at the same time. So if we go down here, we've got do lobby schedule. We're not too worried about that because essentially that's going to be about waiting whilst the players are waiting for more players to load in. So it's not really loads of game logic, it's more just waiting around logic. So we don't really need to worry about that. The do play schedule, that happens when the round starts and it actually looks after the round as it's continuing. And this is something that we're going to need to affect in order to add another team. And firstly, and most importantly, we need to add another team score here to keep track of the scores of each of the teams. So now we have blue, red and green. That should then actually propagate through the rest of this code. So things like this, where we're calling user events, we're actually now be sending through 3 teams worth of data automatically. We don't have to worry about that because we're updating our properties like this and just adding an extra index to these tables. That actually filters through the rest of the code. It's that's one of the powers of using tables rather than hard coding the exact number of teams throughout the entire script, which would then mean it would be almost impossible or quite time consuming to add another team. So we've added another team score there, and the rest of this is fairly okay. We don't really need to worry about it. One further thing is down here on user login. This is an important area to affect as well. So when a user logs in, they are automatically assigned a team, and the logic to do that is within here. In this, if it has teams, then set a user team, and then this calls this function here, set user team. So within set user team, at the moment, it runs this line of code. Let me just comment out my additional lines of code. So at the moment, the game will run this line of code here, which basically says if team 1 has less people on it than team 2, then make this user on team 1, otherwise put them on team 2. What we need to do is remove that line of code and instead change it for something that's a little bit more open to however many teams you want to add. So here I've done set the team the user is going to be put onto 1, but before you actually put them on that team, run this iteration, run this loop, starting from 2 and up to however many teams we have. See how many that team has. So firstly, see if team 1 has less people on it than team 2, then put the player on team 1. If team 1 has less people on it than team 3, then put the player on team 1. But what if team 1 has more players than team 3, put the player on team 3. That's what this little chunk of code here is doing. It's just checking each team against each other team to see whether we need to put our player on a different team. Okay, so once we've done that, it does this set team. That calls a script that's on the user. We don't need to change that script because that script's just after a number. So we've done that part as well. And I think that's everything we need. Ah, yes. Okay. So before we go on, we have this team count, and that's what this is checking. So we need to add another number here. Okay, I think that's everything we needed to do in the game logic. An easy way to check is to Control F and look for teams and just see where teams might be used and see if you need to add any more indices to any tables. Or an alternative is to use the new search function, Control Shift F, look for team, and that will tell you in all of the scripts where you can find team, just in case you change something in somewhere else and you need to go and adjust that. So now we have updated our game logic. Let's also update our level design. So at the moment, our level design has 4 start points, 2 for team 1 and 2 for team 2, or 2 for blue team, 2 for red team. These 2 are for my blue team and these 2 are for my red team. And so what I'm going to do is, you'll see that it's kind of split this way. So one team spawns on this side and one team spawns on this side. But instead what I'm going to do is have one team spawn around here, one team spawn around here, and one team spawn around here. So one in the hotel lobby, one on the beach, and one in these hotel apartments over here. So let's do, we've got location 1. Location 2 is on the beach, and I'm just going to move that up the beach some. So that's going to still be part of that team. So that team spawns over in that corner. I'm going to leave these 2 the same. One person spawns in here. And another spawn point is in here in the lobby. So we've got one in the disco, one in the lobby. For the next 2, for the green team, I'm going to spawn one by this car. So let me get us, let me just duplicate actually this locator over here, because it's got the team script already attached to it. So I've just duplicated that and I'm going to move it over here to the car. So someone can spawn over here and they're going to be on team 3. So I'm affecting the spawn script down the bottom. I'm going to change that team number to team 3. I'm going to duplicate that again. And this time it's already got the number set correctly, and the other people, or another person could, another spawn point could be up here. I could do it on that balcony, but I think I want them to feel like they're coming out of this apartment. So I'm just going to put it there. It's an incredibly, it's actually quite an open spawn point. It might cause some people to get a bit annoyed and hurt. So maybe let's put it behind this pot plant over in this corner. They're less likely to get spawn killed. Still could happen. Another place I could put it is on the roof. I think that's even more exposed, so I won't do that. Okay, so I have some additional spawn points. Let's test it out. Press F5 to test the game, and it will just build the map. And let me see if there are any glorious errors in my console. Okay, so we have no errors. And I've just been spawned in this location. Okay, so I've been spawned on team 3 in the new spawn point. And I can see that because it's saying in my console, put the new user on team 3. Yeah, so it's got an error because I haven't set up that part of... Actually, that's not essential. I'm not using voice chat in this game. But otherwise, it looks like it's working pretty well. A way to check would be to get some friends together and all log into the game at the same time and see if you can get on all 3 teams. Or failing that, you can do something like where we are doing set user team in our on user login, where we're doing that here. Rather than doing less than or equal to, we could just do less than. So less than or equal to will essentially fill it up from 3 forwards. So the first person goes from team 3, second person team 2. If I do it less than, it will start with team 1 and then team 2 and then team 3 and so on. So let's just see whether team 1, I go on team 1 this time. Okay, so yeah, looks like I've been put on team 1. So we can see that now the 3 teams are working and they'll be sending their scores through successfully. So I hope this has been a useful and interesting tutorial on how to add more teams to a team game. I think this is a great opportunity to explore what happens when you add more teams to some of these team games. Maybe look at adding limited team sizes, so teams of 2 or teams of 3. So you specifically saying that this is a very small team game but lots of teams. That could be fun or interesting and lead on to new mechanics and new ideas and new stories to tell in games. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing your team games with lots of teams in Crayta.